But in case you are just waking up and joining us, Woj is going to shake up your morning. I'm reading your Twitter, Woj. The Lakers are targeting Connecticut's Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next coach and are preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring the back-to-back national champion to the NBA. Woj, let's start at the very beginning. Where is this coming from?
Dan Hurley has been the Lakers' target from the very beginning of this search. They have talked to other candidates. They have done their due diligence because they aren't sure they can get Dan Hurley, but he has been their target. He continues to be their target. And now talks have some traction. Dan Hurley, they've had some preliminary contact with Hurley. They have talked, and they are going to talk more, and they're going to do so imminently. Hurley, the Lakers, are going to talk about what it would look like to take Dan Hurley's program and put it with the Lakers, put it with their storied brand in the NBA. The NBA has always been an ambition of Dan Hurley. He's not been shy about talking about that. He is literally at this point the most sought-after coach in all of basketball. And Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss are determined to bring him to LA. They are preparing, I am told, a long-term, massive contract to get him to come. And I think for the Lakers and Pelinka, they want to put in place a program. They don't want to be changing coaches every couple of years. And Dan Hurley loves challenges. And he still sees himself as a high school coach who's an experiment in college. How would what I did at St. Benedict's Prep for 9 years, what my dad did at St. Anthony's in Jersey City, how would that translate to college? Back-to-back national championships, maybe the most dominant tournament run we've seen over the last couple of years, 12 straight wins by double digits. And it is a changing landscape in college basketball. And schools like UConn, who do not have that tremendous football revenue, what is it going to look like for them with revenue sharing and NIL? This is a moment in time for Dan Hurley to consider this. He is considering it. And the Lakers and Hurley are going to talk more here in the coming days. But LA is determined to bring Dan Hurley to Los Angeles.
Okay, so extraordinary. I mean, literally extraordinary in every way. UD is with us this morning. We got a cavalcade of plenty. But Woj, let me come back to you, because you just talked about the changing landscape of college sports, and we understand that, and we'll talk about it more. Pete Thamel's going to jump in a few minutes. But you were just saying to me before we came on the air, the NBA is changing as well, and the things that are required of a coach going forward, and I'd love you to share that with the audience, are different from the things that have been required in the past.
Even for a big market team like LA, that is always star hunting, that is always going to be in position to land the big player who either wants a trade out or a free agent if they have cap space. But you have got to draft well in the NBA now with this new collective bargaining agreement. You've got to develop young players. You cannot just trade all your picks to get veteran players. You end up looking like the Suns do right now, which is very top-heavy and not the infrastructure, not the depth of roster it takes to win. Look at the teams who have advanced in these playoffs, who've gotten deep into the playoffs. The two teams in the finals, Minnesota, the Denvers, how they are constructed. And the Lakers can't be any different than that. So the Lakers see Hurley as somebody, not just drafting well, developing those young players, but the Rui Hachimuras, the Austin Reeves, the Max Christies. They see him having an impact on those players, and they have the 55th pick in the draft. And the idea of Bronny James in LA, who better than Dan Hurley to be his developmental coach with the Lakers? No one's doing it better in basketball right now, but they really believe in Hurley's ability to connect with players, to connect with star players. I've talked to Danny Hurley in the past about the NBA, and I'm not talking, this isn't a conversation about the Lakers. And we talked about what it would be like in the NBA, and he had a great analogy. He said, I know that I don't talk to my son the same way at 21 years old than I did when he was 10 years old. I understand the difference. Now, it is going to require the jump from college to the NBA. It is a different sport. How you interact with your players, how you interact with referees, how you interact, there are adjustments, and he understands that. But the one thing that Hurley has been very clear on, he wants to be historic in this profession. And I think that's why the Lakers have his attention now, because he knows there is no bigger job, no bigger seat in all of sports. And that's why these talks have traction. That's why these conversations are going to escalate in the coming days. And, for UConn, listen, they still have a chance at a three-peat. That is rare. They have a top 5 team coming back. And certainly all of that's going to give Dan Hurley pause. But this is a serious conversation. This is a serious pursuit.
And in case you're wondering, has it ever happened a coach wins a national championship, winds up, in this case, 2 in a row, but ever winning 1 and then winding up in the NBA the next year? The answer is yes. Most recently, Larry Brown did it, won a title at Kansas, was the coach of San Antonio the following year. And you were saying, because people will look at this and say he's going to become LeBron's coach, which in the short term would be true. But you were telling me, Windy, they're looking beyond that, and LeBron is good with it.
Yeah, when LeBron met with the Lakers to talk about the head coaching search, what he told them was, don't make a decision based on me for this next year or 2. Make the best decision that you can make for the Lakers franchise for the next decade. That was the message. And it wasn't hire J.J. Redick. It wasn't hire this guy over here. It was make the best decision for the franchise. That is what he has been standing on and has been related for longer than just this search. But that's what he told them. This potential hire is not about the 2024-25 Lakers. Yes, there would become in there be expectations that he could hopefully, if this happens, improve them and work with LeBron. But this would be something that they'd be investing in for a long period of time. Post LeBron, Anthony Davis, players that are not even on their map right now.
Let me get some reaction from everybody. Udonis Haslem, up and early with us this morning from Miami. You played with LeBron for years. Yes, this is a move for the long term, but in the short term, it's going to involve being LeBron James' coach. How do you see it?
I love it. I love it. I love shaking things up a little bit. Oftentimes when you have NBA veterans that have had an amount of success, we get comfortable. And I think for the Lakers, if they want to get back in those championship conversations, if they want to be considered a serious contender in the West, they got to get back comfortable being uncomfortable. So I think bringing in a different personality, somebody with a little bit of energy. If you look at his track record, what he did at Wagner, his best season was about 25-6, something like that. I think what he did, Rhode Island, he won about 60% of his games, and obviously we know what he did at UConn. So bringing in somebody that's going to get these guys back comfortable being uncomfortable, I think we can now start to put these guys back in those championship conversations because they have the talent with Bron and AD. I think they just got to get these guys out of their comfort zone. I think understanding that just because Bron doesn't have to practice every day doesn't mean everybody doesn't have to practice every day. Those guys still need to be getting in there, honing their skills, and still building those habits. And I think this is a great move for the Lakers. This is what I'm talking about. I love this move for the Lakers. I think they got it right if they can get this one to go through.
Talk to me about credibility in a locker room. A college coach walking in with these kind of established stars under normal circumstances might be a little bit complicated. Dan Hurley is obviously not your average college coach. Talk to me about the credibility that you think he walks in there with in the eyes of these stars.
I think more so than the credibility, I think he comes in with a clean slate. I think the fact that nobody has been coached by him, nobody knows him, I think that brings everybody a little bit on edge. And I think everybody's at attention, kind of understanding or waiting to see what kind of message he's going to bring and what kind of energy he's going to bring. So I think coming in unknown and not having relationships allows him to be the leader of the pack and kind of set the tone in that locker room.
Drea, you and I had so many things planned for this morning. We got tapes that'll never see the light of day. All these things getting ready for game one, and now Woj comes and blows up our entire show. What's your first reaction?
Well, my first reaction is, remember when we were covering the men's college basketball tournament, and how highly were we speaking of Dan Hurley back then? His relationship building is one of the biggest keys to his success as a head coach. Like, that's one of the biggest things. Think about it. When they won the national championship 2 seasons ago, they lost 3 starters from that team and then repeated as national champions because the guys he brought in and the guys that he was developing all believed in themselves and they believed in the system. UD said he's going to bring a little bit of energy. He's going to bring a lot of energy. Dan Hurley has so much passion, fire, and excitement for the game. And for the Lakers team that at times looked lifeless out there on the court this season, looked like they didn't have very much direction, looked like they didn't have very much energy or wanting to play together, they're going to have that from Dan Hurley. And what is the biggest credibility badge than LeBron James signing off? Like, LeBron James and the relationship that he has with Coach Hurley, that's going to be the biggest thing as far as him going into this locker room like, hey, let's do this together.
That does exist. In fact, if we can put up, Cindy, if we can put up the tweet from April 19th, This could be described as foreshadowing. It could be coincidence. Either way, it's certainly interesting. So J.J. Redick, of all people, had interviewed Dan Hurley on his JJ's podcast and posted that. LeBron responded to it. That's why you see at J.J. Redick there talking about Dan Hurley. He's so damn good along with his staff. Super creative with their love it. Woj, this is, 2 months, a little less than 2 months ago.
Yeah, and there's no question that I think Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss have pursued Dan Hurley with an understanding of how it would be received, certainly with their key players. But, you talk to other, and I've heard from NBA head coaches who didn't know any of this was going on. Because UConn has so many players in the draft this year, head coaches are watching a lot of tape on UConn. They might have saw them a little bit in the tournament. They're in the middle of their seasons. They're watching tape on Donovan Clingan and Spencer and Stefan Castle.
Right.
And more than one has commented to me about how sophisticated their offensive actions are, how there's stuff they would like to take from what UConn's doing, and that they're running stuff in college they don't see other coaches running, and that they think it would translate to the NBA. Certainly, Rob Pelinka believes that. There's no question there's an adjustment. It is a major adjustment. The NBA is almost an entirely different sport than college basketball. Mm-hmm. But I think getting the right staff around a coach like Dan Hurley, understanding there's a learning curve. But I think what the Lakers view, when you talk about trying to have a program in the NBA, who are the college coaches who've done well? Billy Donovan going to Oklahoma City. Now, he took over a championship-ready team. He came in a situation where he was asked to win a title right away. Quinn Snyder goes to Utah in a rebuild. They draft Rudy Gobert. They draft Donovan Mitchell. And they develop this group. But they saw it as a program. Brad Stevens to Boston. Those are the success stories. But I think certainly all of those coaches adaptable. And certainly a lot of it is your ability to connect with players and understanding. And you look at, let's say, a Rick Pitino or a John Calipari. Maybe one of the things that at the point in their career, now Pitino had really good success with the Knicks,
yes,
then came back in Boston. You have to understand the players are the stars. Mm-hmm. You are not the star. Dan Hurley can be a big figure in that position, but you are a star as the college coach. You are everything. You are the sun everybody revolves around. You are not that in the NBA. You have to understand that, but that doesn't mean you can't have a big presence and you can't lay a foundation. And I think coaches like Donovan, who Dan Hurley has a very close relationship with, he has always gone to Billy Donovan for advice in his career, whether it was going to a high major, winning a title and trying to repeat. There are lessons to be learned from those coaches.
I will say this.
Go really quick, because I've got Pete.
The tweet that LeBron was responding to, the clip, was him describing how he made over his offense by looking at FIBA games and looking at college football formations. And that's the one thing that NBA people say about Dan Hurley, is that he has proven to be malleable. And that's what LeBron was responding to. That tweet was about him talking with J.J. Redick about that.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Keep them down, try to wear, I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA over here,